what got you into this carnivore space?
Since I was probably I want to say 11, I had disordered eating, which is very common, more common than most people think, I think. And I gave it a shot and it was the best I ever felt. So what it taught me was not to fear food, but then also the quality of the food is a big factor in this. It's not just calories. So rather than forcing this weight loss that so many people do because we're obsessed with calorie counting, we think it's all the same. I was brought to this realization of, the type of calories and protein and real food is way more important than just restriction constantly.
We're thrust into a world of being skinny. Is that drive in and of itself unhealthy for us? Well, this is a very exciting place to be, is sharing thoughts and ideas about life, about carnivore, about positivity, about mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into this carnivore space, and maybe a little bit about what motivates you in life?
Ooh, yeah. Okay. All right. So myself, I'm 32. I'm in Austin, Texas. You and I met because of carnivore.
Yeah.
And I have two worlds where in one world, I'm a sales director at a Fortune 500 company. And that's very corporate world. And then on the other side of things, I make content on YouTube predominantly, but I talk about a lot of things, and carnivore has been one of the areas that I've chosen to focus on. And, how I found carnivore was by accident. I met my best friend. He and I were in Denver. He had tinnitus. And so he was kind of dabbling in all these different things to fix tinnitus, and came across this guy Liam's work, who it's called Liam Heals Tinnitus, I think it is. And he implements carnivore to do that. Basically, this guy coaches people. So my friend started doing carnivore, and I was like, oh, whatever, let's give it a shot. And I, at that time, had not a major eating disorder, but since I was probably I don't know, I want to say 11, I had disordered eating, which is very common, more common than most people think, I think. It's weirdness with food, constant calorie tracking, whatever. So I was like, sure, let's give it a shot. Because to me, eating all meat that was actually less restrictive than I was being. And I gave it a shot, and it was the best I ever felt. The most food I'd ever eaten. I was trail running at the time, and I did 14 miles, 15 miles at a time, no problem.
Wow.
Yeah. And my mood was great. I got 6 hours of sleep. And so, that's how I came across carnivore. And it's been like that for 4 years or 5 years, something like that since. And so, that's a bit about kind of how I found carnivore. And, I think what motivates me is, it's an interesting question. I'm a very curious person, super curious. You are too, right? So can probably understand that. But I think this world is so interesting. There's so much stuff to learn. And so I'm just I think that being a sales director brought me into a space of how building things is really fun to me, building teams, building revenue streams, whatever. But then also this carnivore space has taught me a lot about, our food system and what's going on in that. And then also how we connect with food, and it's just a whole bunch of stuff that it unravels. So what motivates me is just curiosity, honestly, I think.
You mentioned eating disorder, and then you said disordered eating, which I kind of find very fascinating, because ultimately we've labeled a disease, in essence, of our eating, but it's the environment that we've been sort of thrust into. And okay, you're eating this stuff that ultimately is disordered eating, and then they claim, and I say they claim, we've been labeled with having an eating disorder, but it sounds like you're saying maybe it's just disordered eating habits, but there's nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had to work that out myself to even figure out what it is. And I think the term eating disorder, is so extreme sounding that a lot of people wouldn't identify with it. It's all right. So like here in Austin, there's a lot of people, and I'm going to parallel this with something else.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people who are now have chosen to cut back on drinking or stop drinking, but they wouldn't necessarily label themselves an alcoholic, right?
Right.
So because they're not labeled an alcoholic, it opens the door for them to maybe become what is called sober curious and investigate life without drinking. What I'm talking about with a like eating disorder, that's like a label, kind of like an alcoholic, that's like super extreme, and a lot of people wouldn't identify with that. But I really think a lot of people actually, given the society we live in and the food that we're given, have what's called disordered eating because we're given ultra processed foods and like foods that aren't designed to make us feel full, loaded with seed oils, and it creates this constant hunger. Your ghrelin and your lectin are all messed up. And so one might develop disordered eating because you're tweaking things to feel full, to be thin, to look like how you want to look in a world with fake food. You know?
What type of things have you seen change and improve on your carnivore versus your standard diet?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that a lot of women struggle with, and I think men too, because I've worked with many men who have disordered eating. It's way more common than you think. Athletes, for sure, because everybody's trying to get their macros and like protein shakes and all that. So, I used to hyper obsess about every little last thing I ate and like the amount of it. So like, have you ever heard of that app called, I think it's called Track Your Calories or Track Your Health or something like that? I've been doing that when I was in high school. My eating disorder started, I think, when I was like 16. I was going through some really hard stuff, and like it just really took off then and then through college. And so at that stage, I was putting every little thing I ate into this app, like eggs, a piece of bacon, apple, whatever. So I knew every single calorie for everything. And so that creates this sort of like obsession and fear of consuming food. So you don't eat anything hardly, because to you, 1,000 calories is like a ton if you're obsessing over calories and all you think matters is calories. So what shifted was I realized when I did that first month of 30 days carnivore, I ate more food than I'd ever eaten in my entire life, ever. It was delicious.
Love it.
It was so good. Like I'd never eaten like steaks really before. I was super focused on salads and like that kind of thing. And so there was this thing of like, suddenly I'm eating so much food, like 2,000 calories worth of food, but I ended up losing body fat in that month. And it was like easy. And so my body composition changed. So what it taught me was like not to fear food, but then also the quality of the food is a big factor in this. It's not just like calories. So rather than like forcing this weight loss that so many people do, because we're obsessed with calorie counting, we think it's all the same. Rather, it's just like I was brought to this realization of, the type of calories and like protein and real food is way more important than just restriction constantly,
We're thrust into a world of being skinny.
Yeah.
And is that drive in and of itself unhealthy for us?
What do you mean by unhealthy?
Well, it could be lots of things. It could be mental unhealthy behaviors or physical unhealth. And that's kind of what I'm looking like. Is it really we've driven to this be thin and weight loss, and there's always a struggle, and it seems like we're losing the battle, but we really don't talk about real health and wellness, because no matter who you are, if you're not the right size, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Is that a real measure of health and wellness, do you think?
Size, it's funny because I'd be curious to hear what you think about this, because you see so many people coming in, women, to answer your question. My mom, she had like multiple miscarriages because she was too thin. So for certain things, it probably is, right?
Yeah.
No, I don't think that being thin is going to mean that you're healthy. Like the thinnest times I ever was the most thin I ever was probably the least healthy I ever was. Like zero muscle. I ended up dropping out of college because I
Wow.
was so anxious. I didn't correlate it that, like, again, all of the eating disorder stuff, now I can retroactively look back and be like, that's what that was. But in the moment, I was just trying to be thin. And I didn't think it was an eating disorder, right? I kind of did, but not really. So yeah, it created massive anxiety. I ended up dropping out of college because I couldn't cope with certain things. Just my brain wasn't healthy. I wasn't getting any animal fat, nothing. So no, I don't think it correlates, but I do think that we live in a society where it's tricky, right? Because it's like, if you say somebody's healthy if they're overweight, but then that's not necessarily true either, right? If somebody's like obese.
Well, I guess it depends on our definition of obesity.
Yeah.
And the definition of our blood testing or, laboratories or our blood pressure. And I'm not sure we're so right and know what we're talking about. I see plenty of, as we label obese, overweight women who get pregnant, have babies, and skinny or normal sized women that don't, but it's all over the place. And so I believe that there's really no other animal that intentionally tries to be skinny.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think it's much more than just weight. You know what I mean? It goes into the mindset stuff. It goes into how you feel. It goes into your hormones. But a lot of this stuff too, I think we over obsess about this stuff in our culture. It's like, what size pants do you have? What's shirt, small, medium, or large? Like, there's almost this culture, I feel like, where people hyper obsess over health. Sometimes even like in Austin, I notice it, where it's like we have to measure everything.
Yeah.
We have to measure your sleep and your heart rate and your macros and, and I'm just like, I don't think that's how this works. Like we're not measuring everything with the sun and the earth, right? Like it just kind of works. So I don't know that thin is a measure of health. I don't know that obesity means you're healthy, but I don't necessarily think there's like a clear line. I think it's much bigger than just like scale and size. It goes much greater than that,
I always say data is distracting.
I think so too.
And ultimately we're measuring things, but despite the fact that we're measuring them, we're still getting out of line. And so maybe the data we're trying to measure is worthless anyway, and getting back to some basic reality of who and what we are in our origins, the primal mist, I call it, where we came from.
Ooh, primal mist.
Primal mist.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And so I'm wondering, you can tell us a little bit about the most important thing to you in your life, and whether it's our mindset or what we put in our mind and what we put in our mouth. And how do you do you have one more than the other? They have equal. I know you talk a lot about mindset, and I just wanted to dig deep into that a little bit.
So most important to me in general, or of those two, mindset or whatever?
In general.
Well, I mean, what's the most important thing to me in life? I don't know. That's a big question. I'd say, oh gosh, I really want to do something that matters, and then like within that, do the right thing. I think that's important to me. So that's a really broad way of saying, like, I think that what matters to me will changes as I age in different, times in my life. Whenever I have kids, it'll be my kids probably, right? Like right now I don't have kids, so it's not my kids. But I think like whatever I'm doing, I want it to matter, which is why I think carnivore is so important, because I think it helps people identify with like achieving who they're supposed to be, like, I know for myself, when I was obsessed with starving myself, I wasn't myself. I was a shell of who I am now, meaning my friendships were very different. My career was very different. Who I picked as partners was very different. And it's like way less happy than I am now. So like the carnivore thing matters because it helps people find themselves again, I believe. If it comes down to what do I think is more important, right? Like what you put in your mouth, what you put in your mind. Do you pay attention to quantum physics at all?
I do.
They're finding that the way that we perceive of reality actually morphs it. So let me give you a better example, actually. My dad was married to a woman when she was, I think they were in their like late 20s or something. She was like gorgeous and beautiful and like all these things. It didn't end up working out, but she was, one of the reasons it didn't work out because she was really, really concerned with getting breast cancer. Her mom got breast cancer at 52 and passed away from breast cancer at 52. So she was like very concerned with that. And so this woman was like hyper concerned with that to the point that she had a double mastectomy. She didn't have cancer. She got a double mastectomy just to remove the potential of that happening to her. This woman died at 52 from breast cancer, the same exact way her mom did.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's really interesting to me because it's like she almost like hyper obsessed about it, thought about it so much that she like called it in. So when I think about what matters, what you put in your mouth, what you think about, like there are plenty of people out there that eat ultra processed foods and they're fine. My dad being one of them. He doesn't think it's going to hurt him and, it's fine. Is that real? I don't know. But I do think his mindset of being happy and being healthy and like letting things go and moving forward and having fun in life and moving and being the sun with friends and community matters way more than the over obsession on the food.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to say that I eat carnivore because I think that's a tool to get us there to like the higher potential of oneself, but I don't think it's just one or the other. Does that make sense?
Mindset is a very valuable thing. That's what you're saying. And our thoughts have some vibrational energy with the universe, as we have labeled it, that creates our reality.
Totally.
And carnivore may take us to another level. I'm curious if your dad's ever tried carnivore.
He's interested. He's interested in it, but I don't think that's like, he just turned 80. And I think he's like, you know what? Like, he's not thrown in the towel by any means. Like, it's not like that. But I think he's started cooking more steaks. He's become more conscious of that. But he likes his cereals.
Yeah.
So we grew up on. Yeah. He's a baby boomer.
Well, my grandmother lived 104. She smoked Pall Malls, drank Manhattans, and was an Italian eater, Mediterranean, and done a lot of junk food she really had. But she did have some habits that were caustic to our existence. So I do believe that our mindset is critical, but it's always hard to measure, which comes first, the chicken or the egg. And
what do you think?
I think the mindset is the master.
I think so too.
Ultimately, our thoughts create all things, and we could control our existence through what we think in here, because what's out there is only what's in here. So my thoughts create this. Your thoughts create this. We all have a different vision of what is true. And that's the beauty of it. Our mind can be controlled. And so now what we need to do is, how do we learn how to take control over making those mindset changes?
Right. I agree with that. And I think, one of the reasons to validate carnivore is like, there's ways to make that easier for yourself too, right? Like if your mind does control reality, which is what they're finding in quantum physics, is like what I was getting at before is, the way you perceive of a molecule actually changes its shape and changes the way it shows up for you. So you might be looking at me with all of your stories and your mindset and your perspective, totally different than how I'm looking at you, or like anything neutral here in the middle, like these cups, whatever. And that changes them in your reality, right? But I think there's ways that like one of the ways I have been able to better manage my mind and to pay attention to the thoughts is like, we can do things to improve that. And I, as an example, cut out drinking, because that having hangovers isn't helpful. It's not helpful, right? Another way for me to find a path to that is carnivore, and doesn't mean that that's the end all be all for how you get it done, but I do think we have these layers on top of us, and it's almost like they get stacked on it's like when we're babies, we're born, we're so neutral, we're so open. And then all these social things are stacked on us, how to be skinny, how to be attractive, how much processed food, like Pop-Tarts and all that stuff. We have to like remove them to get back to it, maybe. That's sort of how I think of it.
So our environment will affect our brain function, which affects our perception of our lives.
I think so.
And carnivore in some way removes something. I think it removes the plant sugars, the antigens, the chemicals, and the fermentation in our gut, which makes alcohol. So those that don't drink alcohol still may be making alcohol inside their bodies through fermentation of the microbes and the amino acids and the sugars in our gut from our plant protein low-fat diet.
Which is so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I always say that you might not be consuming alcohol, but you're making alcohol. And we see a lot of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, which may be also affiliated with the alcohol that your body is making. And there's something called spontaneous alcohol syndrome, where someone just shows up drunk, and yet they had been drinking no alcohol.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I've not seen it, but I've certainly read about it, and it makes sense because the alcohol is made by the fermentation of plants.
Okay. So are all these like plant eaters just like drunk all the time?
Well, brain fog.
Okay.
Or depression or all sorts of diseases that show up.
Yeah.
Could they be simply secondary to the consumption of a plant protein low-fat diet? Maybe you tell me a little bit about your history of alcohol and why you sort of said, but maybe you want to share your family member and how that was effective in your life. And I believe that it's secondary to a plant poisoning of our bodies, that these things happen to some people and we think it's because, they weren't strong, when in fact they were damaged by particles of other organisms like plants.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think I find that topic so interesting, like the plants and then the alcohol and all of that stuff. It's kind of similar in my mind. So, this goes back to the whole, I see a lot of parallels with alcohol and ultra-processed foods. So sometimes I talk about why I'm in carnivore as like the two are sort of the same in my mind. When I stopped drinking, I was like 25 or 26, and I never can remember the exact one. So that's why I'm always like, it's in there. And I was a normal social drinker. I didn't drink on weekdays at all. I didn't have a problem with drinking a lot, like in terms of like every day, every night kind of thing. But I would just go out with my friends and drink on the weekends, and pretty normal. What did happen was about as I got older, like 23, 24, it became more frequent that I would black out. So like you just go out of consciousness, just not remember the night, wake up, or brown out, which is like essentially when you get really, you're drinking too much essentially. And so anyways, to shorten a long story, in that same range, my mom had become a pretty bad alcoholic post-college and then up into in my 20s. And so I sort of like had this really kind of gnarly insight into how one's personality and life can erode if they drink alcohol and they maybe shouldn't be that person to do it. So anyways, what ended up happening was like I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend, and we lived together. And in that same week, my mom just totally like lost control when she was drinking. It was like the same week.
Wow.
And it was crazy because they were like the two pillars of my life, if you will, at that time. So I just it just like broke my heart, the whole thing. And I went on like a 3-day bender, and I came out of that. I'd never been on a bender before. And I was like, oh my God, like I had been trying to tell my mom for years now to stop drinking, and I just dealt with her drinking by drinking. How hypocritical. So I stopped drinking because it scared me. I was like, God, I can't be like that. And the next like 5 months were the most amazing months ever. Like I just never had, it's kind of like when people do carnivore, you come out of like brain fog. Like with alcohol, people don't realize you're hungover for like 4 days, 5 days. You're not like your peak self by any means. So having none of those days for the first time in my adult life was like this reality shifting, holy moly, like this is what, I was only 25. So it was like, I'd never really lived life without drinking since I was like 14, 15. That's what our culture does.
Right.
So I just had this realization of like, I have so much energy. I have so much time. I feel really good. I'm in a good mood. Like I still go out and party. I have tons of energy, but I don't need to drink. So that was the first introduction of that. And I realized, oh my God, had my mom known how lame this was from like a younger age, maybe she could have changed and not gotten sucked into the culture, which is like a very, moms have wine together and that whole thing. So anyways, when I came across carnivore, I realized it was the same thing with ultra processed foods. When you cut them out, you're like, wow, I have no brain fog. Wow, I'm full. Wow, I'm happy. Like I can sleep better. I need very little, whatever. And it was this parallel again where I was like, oh my God, our culture, our society, we're taught to believe this stuff about alcohol because it's sales. It drives sales. Same with ultra processed foods. It's money. And it's not, when you take it away, life is much easier. At least it was for me. That's my take.
Disordered living secondary to a disordered diet, which is ultimately disabling all of us to lose control and our ability to discern the right way to go in our lives.
Yeah, like exactly. And to be able to be happy. I mean, that's the end of the day, right? Like we all want to have great friendships and great relationships and make good money. And it's like we're literally buried under this crap. And we don't need to be, but so I'm a sales director, right? So I see the world in sales. My mom, she owned 3 restaurants, #1 restaurants in Denver, top, like for 21 years in the most expensive place. You know what their #1 seller was? They did breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Do you know what the #1 thing is that they sold? Alcohol.
Yeah.
Biggest revenue driver. So people keep pushing it, buying it, right? Because it's profitable. What do we think sells with food? It's not going to be meat because you get full. It's going to be the thing, the Cheeto, that had 27 scientists design it so that you keep eating it. It's money, right? So you remove those 2 things and now you're actually with yourself and you can feel, like you said, what's the next best path for you, based off of what,
So have we lost our direction in that profits and not people, money, not mommies, men, and masters, I always say, is really our directive. And we've lost sense of our families, of our communities, of ourselves.
I don't know that we've lost it. I think we're in a constant state of evolution, And so like, I think there's been this need, for example, for like women, when my mom was growing up, she was one of her few to go to graduate school. That was very rare for her age group. And now it's very common. There's like this shift from like male-female roles that was kind of necessary, I think, in some ways to get women to have like opportunities that they'd want, let's say, and all that. So now we're kind of in this place of like, what's the role of family, right? Like, what's the role of who's making the food? Is it fast food because like everybody's working all the time or whatever? And so I think it's more of just now we're in a next phase of the evolution. I don't think anything's lost. I think it's more of like a reminder. Like, oh yeah, like we've just been in a hurry, a lot of us. We're just kind of bogged down by things that are constant advertisements, right? Like, that's there and that's cool, but let's just maybe like shift direction a little bit. That's how I see it. Do you see it like that?
It's always happening the way it's supposed to for each and every one of us. We have to see the beauty in all of it and yet make the changes to the direction we want to go. But it takes suffering to get there. Without suffering, there is no strengthening because ultimately we each individually go through our journeys because our minds are open when the right note is sung or the words are spoken, because we don't hear it until we hear it.
Yeah. Words can't teach, only life experience does.
That's correct. Because there's a formula, and we've been taught in our schools and our religions and in so many ways that but ultimately we're still going to take risk on the things that are bad for us, and we're going to walk away from the things that are good. But you don't know that unless you experience them.
I'm curious with your thought. Do you think that there's a cost to everything? Like, for example, going to the gym, it hurts and it costs you time, right? And effort and you're literally ripping your muscles, but there's a reward as an example of cost to reward. Do you think everything has a cost to it?
Sunlight and photons, they bathe the earth, and they pay the plants something in order to grow. And they pay the other organisms that consume them in order to grow. And there's a cost to everything. And yet it all sort of is in a cycle of rejuvenation. It's all coming around. And so, yeah, it wasn't easy for the photons, I'm sure, to kick out those electrons or join in the electrons and change the molecular structure of the molecules that ultimately make a carbohydrate particle, which ultimately is a plant, right? And so nothing's easy in all of this, right? But there's immense energy in everything. And I think you need to, in order to grow muscles, you need to stretch them to the point where just before they're damaged. Obviously, so that's part of life in so many ways. If you don't risk pain, suffering, and death, you never grow and get to the next level. In order to walk, to stand, to do anything, to breathe, there's cost to it, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, it's our poetry, it's our music, it's our thoughts, it's all of that comes together and create this amazing universe we live in. Yet it's all a mind game, because we're telling a story of what we think it is. It could be completely something else. And to another organism, they look at it and they have no idea what we're talking about. Right. But that's the beauty of this conversation, because ultimately, so many people out there, I suffered for many years with physical, mental problems, which I think they're all related. And then our outside world troubles, which are all related to those troubles. So nothing is separate. You've gone through some suffering, and you've made some choices to change, and you've found some improvement. And I think really the whole part of this conversation is that there are people out there just like you and I that are on their journey at this place. And for that one moment, they've come in contact with your words, my words, our conversation, that they're going to go like, forget this shit, see you later. Or they're going to like, oh, this is kind of interesting.
Right.
Wow. I mean, carnivore and the conversation we're having absolutely creates our cosmos.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, and none of the stuff that I've gone through either is like unique, right? Like it's very common, actually. That's what's so interesting about it is how many people do you know that have family members that are alcoholics, right? Or like,
my family's gone through it. I've seen it. And I would never call myself an alcoholic, but I drank. I used it.
Yeah.
But then when I stopped, I was like, oh, wow, what a difference.
Yeah.
And even when I stopped coffee, what a difference.
Yeah.
And
I haven't cut that one out yet.
Well, I
did for 3 months. I had night terrors.
but we're all finding where we're at, when the right time in the right way.
Right.
But I think that what this is about is sharing our experiences. And the beauty is a podcast today is a place that so many people have access to around the globe. You don't have to be accepted to university, college, pay the money. You don't have to be at the right social,
economic,
cultural
yeah.
sort of status.
We're just talking.
We're just sitting and talking. I learn from people just sitting and talking about paleo, keto, carnivore,
yeah,
and also faith, but mindset.
Yeah.
I say faith is mindset. And so everyone that's listening, watching, sees something inside them that has a similarity and differences. We were traveling yesterday together, stopped at a gas station, and a young lady was in trouble, probably late teens, early 20s, maybe.
Yeah, she was like 22.
Maybe, and needed help. And so you were gracious to help. What is it you thought and felt that brought that humanity to the moment?
Yeah, I mean, something that I've really been paying attention to in the last year is really slowing down. There's a lot of wisdom to that. I live in such a fast-paced life, right? Where I think a lot of the really important things come in the slower moments, or like when you take the time to just be in them, right? Like, and so in that moment, I don't know, she basically just came over and like talked to us and asked for $5 if we had it. And then I just kind of went over there and gave her the money, and then I just started talking to her. I was like, what's going on? What's up? And long story short, this poor girl, she said this guy that she was dating, like, started to get like physical, and so he'd hit her before, and like she wanted to leave, like, and then she bolted out of there this time. And I was just talking to her about it, and then I was just like, can I help in any way? She's like, no, I'm just going to go to my mom's. She's like really close by. And it's just like, I think in my mind, the intention is, I'm not trying to be a good person. I want to be a good person, but I'm not trying to talk about this to say, oh, I was a good person. It's rather like, rather than speeding by and being like, here's $5, bye. It's like that extra thing of being like, how are you?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on, right? To the point that you have to walk up to me on a cold ass day in shorts at this gas station. You don't know me. And now you're crying. Like, what's going on, right? And I think like you ever watch near-death experiences or anything like that? I have. Near-death experiences, if you read the Bible, if you listen to things about frequencies and vibrations, if you listen to people who talk about meditation, almost everything, everything. If you watch Interstellar too, have you seen Interstellar? You haven't seen Interstellar? Oh my God. Not yet. Oh my God, Kiltz, it's the best movie of all time. Watch it and then call me. It's my favorite movie. It all centers back to love. Everything does. Yeah. And so, like I've been like actively working on slowing down and doing the thing that leads with love. Because I have a very sparky personality. I can be direct if I need to be. I can stand up for myself. But I'm also a very soft person. And I think in the culture today that we live in, it sometimes pulls the directness, the speed out of us, but it's not necessarily the way. It's like, slow down, chill out, talk to somebody, like, what's going on? So there's
a story in everyone.
Yeah.
Do we overly judge in a negative way versus in a loving way?
Probably, yeah. But it's tough too, because, it's one of those things where like intellect versus intuition, I think there's a different feeling when you feel like somebody's off. Like women have a good sense of that with creepy men. You can just feel it. You're like, but if you over intellectualize it, you might give them the benefit of the doubt, not judge them, whatever. It's very different. So there's a need for judgment. I do think that. I think it's a good thing to judge people, actually, because you can't be best friends with everybody, right? And you can't, you only have so much time. You have to say no to say yes. But I do think that most people are doing their best, trying at least. And it's like important to like try to see that, you know? What do you think?
I think love is critical of all.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, the discernment of when you say, I love you, see you later, or love you, you're welcome in to the space. But that we need to, there's a discernment. But the interesting part gets back to the mind game. We are the creator of all things within ourselves. And so maybe there's something we can see when we think differently about the situation.
Totally.
But it's knowing when to act and to move in or away. And those are still important parts of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I've seen somehow there are people that could stand in front of a lion and tame the lion, tame the beast. Yeah, I think so much of us are used to the fear flowing first rather than the faith.
Yeah, it's like, do you lead with love or do you lead with fear?
Yeah.
Like, what do you evoke from others too, right? Because that's real too. What we evoke from people is often what we're thinking about.
That's all it, that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's the thoughts of breast cancer.
Right.
And then they show up.
It's nuts.
Because we live the vibrational thoughts of the thing. Mm-hmm. And so we give energy to everything. Mm-hmm. It's mind game because there's nothing out there.
Yeah. I was wondering about this before too. This is kind of back what we were talking about before, but like cost with things and like what we evoke from things and all that. I think there is a cost to almost everything. Mm-hmm. And that's not a bad thing, right? Mm-hmm. Like dopamine, right? It costs us to get dopamine. You got to work hard or like do something good and then you get a dopamine hit and then that's a good thing. What do you think the cost is of carnivore?
Does it have a detriment to our body differently? Does it have an effect on our body differently than other foods?
I don't know. Like, there's some people who would say carnivore is really not it. Like right. Or there's some people that say it is, but like, I wonder from your experience, I do think there's a cost to carnivore. I haven't quite figured it out what it is yet, but I'm curious of what you think it is because it's not immune to having a cost.
Well, there's a cost to everything.
Right.
And ultimately, all molecular structures are changed over time, whether it's external radiation particles that you and I can't see or feel, or it's some other particles that are related to the sun, the wind, the rain, the Earth's factors, or it's simply the beating of our heart, the motion of our muscles, and the breakdown over time of every structure that exists. Does a plant-based diet have more detriment than an animal-based diet or a combined diet? I say animal-based is animals, plant-based is plants, and then there's an omnivorous diet in between, which is some of both. And I don't know that specifically. And it's a hard one because if you're carnivore, you're going to live longer than an omnivore and herbivore. We haven't proven that. Mm-hmm. We do. I know for myself physically, I feel so much better on carnivore than I did on omnivore. I was never really a full plant eater, but I focused a lot on plants. But I do believe that carnivores that eat a high protein, a low fat diet. I would say, I don't even know what protein looks like. You either eat lean meat or fatty meat. And ultimately, every cell of every organism contains fat, proteins, and sugars and minerals and vitamins. And so the macro measurements of those, we're just still listening to someone who says they measured them and we believe what they say.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? I mean, this goes back to the whole, like, we're measuring everything, but it's almost like on this, I don't know, this is where you can get really wooey, right? So I like to say I'm one woo. I'm not too woo-woo, but I'm a solid one woo. And I'm like, even what we're figuring out with measuring, like all these things that we're measuring, who's to say that they really matter that much, or that they're like the answer to all. Like, for example, cholesterol has been demonized for years based off of a measurement system that's flawed. So our entire paradigm of reality since the 50s is like totally backwards. And yet we have struggled to reset that and allow people to see like, no, cholesterol's supposed to be there, it's like the firefighter kind of deal that people give that analogy, right? Like, don't blame the firefighter for being at the fire.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So it's like, yeah, I don't know what to do with all that. Sometimes I think the measuring is too much.
His science is fantastic if you want to go to Mars, I guess. But ultimately, has the complexity of science made our health and wellness better, do you think?
Yes, because I think that we need like modern day medicine, right? Like there's a place for Western medicine and there's a place for Eastern medicine, right? Like I think they both serve a purpose. It's just that I think sometimes we confuse when they're needed, right? Like if I'm going to get in a car accident and something happens, my arm breaks, I'm going to go to the ER now, get me to the ER. I was in Africa a few months ago and I fainted on the mountain and I have 24 stitches in here. Yeah. And you can see this guy here. Like I was not sitting there being like, okay, like everybody just like pray for me. I was like, get my ass down,
down the mountain. I
had a stick in my face. Like it was a huge hole in my face. Yeah. And that was a moment where I was like, yeah, I would love a hospital. Give me stitches. Please give me painkillers. And, you've probably recognized this too in all the conversations you've had, but Western medicine is so valuable and yet it's so specialized. It's like we're not taking in the big picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, amazing. You've healed very well, by the way.
I did actually.
It's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But is our nutritional science, with all the measurements and the complexities of it, making our lives healthier, or are we still seeing more disease, more heart disease, cancer, obesity, and go down the road, the immunologic conditions?
Yeah. Well, on that note of me healing quickly, my doctor, who's a specialist, said mine was like one of the top 10 he'd ever seen worst. He was like, you're healing so fast. He had to give me steroids to calm down the healing. And he goes, what are you eating? I was like, I can tell you. It's a whole rabbit hole.
So would you explain your beautiful healing as carnivore?
Yeah, I ended up, I would say carnivore was a huge factor, and I'll give it to myself. I think I was blessed with a body that really does me right. I think that I can rely on my body, and I'm an athlete. So I would say it was partially that, just that it has always done me right. But then, yeah, I mean, I went up this mountain. I ended up going back up the mountain and did it in half the amount of time. And I surprised it's the highest freestanding mountain in the world. It's not easy. And I surprised my friends at the top, which they didn't think I would be there. And you're at 20,000 feet altitude, like,
wow.
Then and you're camping, coming up, coming down. Like, so yeah, I absolutely attribute a lot of that to carnivore because I couldn't chew. All I could eat was little bits of chicken and stuff, and I was full. I was going off of ketones completely. So yeah, I definitely think that was a huge part of it. And I do think we over measure things. I really do. Like I think there's like this obsession in our culture sometimes with like tracking, and I think the over tracking of nutrition has gotten away from it. Like if it grows from the earth, and you can cook it, that's far better than if it's human made. That's just very simple. So I'm probably going to have some ground beef over protein bar, even if the protein bar nutrition facts say that there's 25 grams of protein in that versus 20 in the meat. That's a version of like measuring and saying, oh, you need to have 25 grams instead of, so I'm going to choose this protein bar that's fake over real meat. Like, no, that's where I think we're getting away from it. Like we're over measuring, over calculating.
Where do you put fruits and vegetables in the hierarchy of health foods?
Yeah. So, I've done a lot of conversations with interesting people, like opposing views. So I've had the benefit of kind of just listening to plant-based doctors debate with like Sean Baker or Chafee or Ken Berry or whoever, and then talk with them afterwards too, like really have one-on-one conversations with people that are plant-based and whatever. And I think that hierarchy is protein and fat, animal for sure, is like, if you're going to do it 90, 95% probably for diet. And then I think that honestly, there's a population that works with just carnivore. And I think there's people that seasonally benefit from having fruit in their diet. Like when we were living life and scavenging, like there probably wasn't always meat around. And sometimes we had milk from the cow, right? So that has carbs in it. And so I think seasonally having some fruit in there is fine. Our fruit today is totally different, so much more sugar and bigger and all that, right? But I think seasonally that's fine. And then I think with plants, I think, look, I think you got to know that they're living, they're sentient. I believe that we're going to find that out pretty darn soon. And I think that, yeah, like in the same way that I'm not going to eat a living cow, I will kill the cow and then eat it. You got to kill the plant and then eat it, I think. And what a lot of Eastern medicine talks about is fermentation. That's a big thing. And I think there's something to that. So if one's going to have plants, like make sure the plant's dead, like kill it, steam it, like ferment it at the very least, have much fewer than we've probably been told we need. But if one wants to have them in there, make it sure it's the right ones for you. Test them out a little bit.
I've always said they cook, grind, ferment, soak. That's the way a plant is less toxic, but not non-toxic. And add lots of animal fat is, I think, really critical.
You're big on the animal fat.
Yeah, animal fat, because there is no such thing as a plant fat. You either have industrial plant oils, which all come with phytochemicals, which are not good for us. And I believe rendered fat is also not good for us.
Yeah.
So,
interesting.
Because
like rendered beef fat, for example?
Rendered animal fat is not good for us because you've now changed the molecular structure. You may have damaged some of the cellular components that are important for your body to utilize. So heating things denature them.
Yeah.
And so if I denature something, how is it good for you? And Pottinger's cats Pottinger studied this in cats where they fed them raw milk, raw meat, cooked meat, or pasteurized milk. And the cats that ate the cooked meat and the pasteurized milk were unhealthy, and their subsequent generations were unhealthy. And so it may be a problem for us that we don't realize that a lot of us, most people are eating a cooked meat, medium well to well done. There's no fat because the fat was melted away anyway or rendered. And I see most people, even carnivores, cut the fat away.
Yeah, I never, that's the other thing with having an eating disorder. You're told for so long that fat makes you fat. I mean, that was the story, right?
Right.
With rendered fat, are they just heating it? Is that essentially what it is?
Essentially, when you heat fat, it renders it, it melts it essentially.
Okay.
And that's why I don't even do ghee, because ghee is taking butter and cooking it essentially.
Okay.
And so you really want to have the raw butter, the raw milk. I just don't do milk at all because I think it's for babies. And I think that's the real key here. And when you eat fat, it kills the microbes in the gut, which are flourishing. And the flourishing microbes go up the esophagus into the upper and lower respiratory system, out the rectum, anus, into the vagina in women, which causes vaginitis, cystitis, cervicitis, endometritis, salpingitis, and ophritis, which are just terms for inflammation of the reproductive system, which causes pelvic inflammatory disease, endometriosis, endometritis, uterine fibroids, adenomyosis, name the disease, including cancers of the male and female reproductive tract. Infertility is on the rise, and it's all on the rise from a plant-based, low-animal fat diet. I believe if you're a plant eater, cook the plants, add animal fat. And again, the best thing is—
Not rendered.
Not rendered. It's best best raw.
Okay.
And so
That makes sense.
it's kind of crazy. And I'm just curious a little bit about your eating habits and fasting habits. What do you typically eat in a day? How frequently do you eat? And what are your thoughts on fasting?
Yeah. Oh man, there's so much in that too with the rendered fat stuff. I mean, it's like a lot of stuff I've been playing with today. What do I do for food, fasting, all of that? Yeah, I think this has been an interesting one. I think that we say that I believe fasting is a wonderful thing, and I think it happens naturally. Like, I didn't eat anything today until noon, I don't think. And then sometimes I don't eat. Yesterday, I didn't eat until by accident until 3, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's days I wake up at 7:30 in the morning and I am hungry. And this is kind of what I've realized with this. This is also kind of what we were talking about yesterday about like feminine energy versus masculine energy. I don't know what it's like to be a man. I don't have any take on that. But I do know to be a woman, I've come to understand and like work with, let's say, my body in a way that I never used to. And when people even say those words, I could work with my body, I find it cringe. Because I'm like, for some reason, it just always kind of was like, it's annoying sounding. But I actually do think that this is like almost in a really kind of harsh way of putting it, kind of like a machine that we're in. And so like you want to give your car nice gas and give it a car wash and stuff. So what I'm getting at is for women's bodies, I think that there's like an entire evolution that goes on all month that you're not going to feel the same every single Monday of each month. You know, Monday to Monday, you might feel hungrier that Monday following the next one. So I used to force the fasting a lot. I used to like, okay, people in carnivore, we're going to do 14 to 16 hour fast. I did a 7-day fast actually once, which was pretty cool. I think it's cool to try, but now I don't worry about it so much, and it makes fasting easier. So like tomorrow, if I wake up at 7:30 and I eat something, then I know I'll probably just eat normal the rest of the day. The following day, I probably won't be hungry until 4, honestly, because I'm just listening to what it's telling me to do in a way. Doesn't mean I'm overeating. Doesn't mean I'm having an excess. I'm just giving it what it's asking for in the moment. So I think fasting is really valuable. I think we should stop eating so much because our insulin levels are whacked out. I think there's totally a place for that. And I think once I've done carnivore for 4 or 5 years now, I've gotten to a place where I can kind of navigate it, you know, then you can kind of, for me, I've taken the pressure off a little bit and it just naturally happens. Does that make sense?
Because naturally we would fast because we just didn't have food around. There was no cupboard or refrigerator or freezer.
Yeah.
And so you had to go do the work. And finding it might take longer than we expected. And potentially, depending on the time of year and where you lived in the season, there might be more migration or hibernation, nesting. And I suspect human beings probably did that a lot. There are people that live in areas where there's little food in the wintertime. And obviously, we figured ways to store it up. But the best stored food is actually fat on your body.
It is. And, you know, the thing too, though, I would be curious to hear what you think about this. I think some people in the carnivore space who are trying it, they kind of screw themselves with fasting too soon, I think, sometimes.
What do you mean?
It's going to be totally dependent on each person because some people are on insulin and whatever. But I think some people push it too hard with fasting and then they crave a ton of sugar or a ton of food or whatever, and then they break. And they have the ultra processed foods, or they have the thing, or they overeat, or whatever. So, I mean, we're not in the safari like we were then. We are in a world of gas stations and free food and advertisements. And so, like, it's negotiating that relationship that's infiltrating our mind, right? And navigating our body with the fasting thing. Sometimes it's okay to have 2 bacon strips or some eggs if you really are starving. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't think the fasting is critical.
Yeah.
But if you're sick, fasting is one of the best ways to heal.
Totally.
Because you want to eliminate, I call it there's basically a compost heap in our gut.
Mm-hmm.
A compost heap is basically a big abscess. We've eaten a plant protein low-fat diet, which again, those microbes are fermenting and they're making a big abscess. And because really, if you think about it, what's the most putrid part of our body? It's what's inside of our gut.
Mm.
And fasting will help you empty the digestive canal. And in fact, fasting, like a fasting testing, you're not fasting until your gut is empty of food. Mm-hmm. Because as long as food's in your gut, you're always secreting sugars, amino acids into the liver and fat to the lymphatics.
Yeah.
The fat's absorbed fast. Meat's never seen in the toilet, only plants. And so the fasting, I'll do a 3 to 5, I do a 5-day fast quarterly, a 3-day fast monthly. Not 100%, but the quarterly I've been really good at. Mm-hmm. I did a 7-day fast last year also.
Nice.
Added an extra fast. And it's not necessary, but it's one of those things that gives you food freedom. And it's just like, yeah, I don't need that. I'm fine.
Totally. I mean, one of my best friends too, she had PCOS and fasting helped her a lot. Yeah. A lot. And I actually gave her, I don't know if it's like Heart and Soil, I think is the brand, but it's called For Her package. Uh-huh. And it's all of this like organ meats and stuff like that. And I sent her that because she was struggling to get pregnant and she was overweight and she ended up fasting and then doing that and she got pregnant really pretty quick.
Right.
There's something to it for sure, right?
Well, combination, the birth control pill and the abortion pill are made out of plants.
And
what
so, do you mean? I don't know.
Well, that's how we really, all the pharmaceuticals we have are all created initially from plants. Our ancients were mighty smart, and remember the Spice Islands and the discovery of all these places around the world, which didn't need discovering; they were already there, and someone was already there. But ultimately, we went there in order to find plant products in order to use as medicinal reasons and things like medicine. That. Yeah, talk a little bit about your podcasts and coaching and how and what is your drive in life and helping people?
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking. Podcast is fun. Yeah. So I have a YouTube channel where I talk about a lot of different things. In the last year, it started out with me talking about life without drinking from just a normal like honestly trying to communicate. Like I wasn't an alcoholic. I'm not in recovery, but I just stopped drinking and like, holy shit, life is pretty good. That was kind of the take on it of like, you can save like thousands of dollars and like, you can still go party. You just feel better. You have more energy and all this stuff. Like it's a total hack. I started out there and then it came into carnivore and I stumbled upon carnivore. Very quickly became a coach through Sean Baker's program. And then I started coaching people through that and have been doing that for some time. I actually put that on hold though, because I just don't have enough time. I just really don't have enough time. And what I like to do is talk about the food system and like I like to get to the root problem, like what's going on. And so I talk about that a lot on there and like, what's the solution? So it's kind of coming a lot to understanding metabolic health and helping people understand like, oh, once you get that down and remove processed foods. So I talk about that. I do opposing views, just a lot of different things about the mind. Quantum physics has been coming into it too. So to package it all together, it's essentially there to help people. It's to help me, but to also help people realize our realities are so much bigger than what we've been taught and told and sold. Because so much of what we do is just based in sales and driving profit, right? We're very powerful people. We're very capable. So I like to interview people in those lanes. And what motivates me is I find it freaking cool. We have a cool world that we live in. I mean, seriously, I just saw this post last night that 3 days ago, these Italian researchers for the first time ever made light into a solid. Like they took light and they made it into a solid, which is like, how, right? That's wild to me. There's this other thing going on that they're now realizing with kids that are nonverbal, autistic kids, are telepathic. Legitimately. I'll have to send you this podcast. So, I could go on and on and on, but my point is this world is so cool.
Fascinating.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
We have so much out there that we're so capable of. The mind, the body, like the consciousness, spirit. Like, I just want to understand it all and share it all, right?
Yeah.
This is cool and it's beautiful.
What's your favorite book?
I'd probably say my favorite books of all time, because I've read them so many times, was Harry Potter. But I also think the book Think and Grow Rich is pretty damn good. Have you read that one?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Many times.
Yeah.
And Harry Potter too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's all magic, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all magic.
It's all magic.
It's all magic.
What's your tomorrow look like?
Like literally the day? What's it look like? Okay.
You can take it as you want.
Let's see. So, every day is just like become a really good day.
Mm-hmm.
It's just cool. So I don't know. I'm excited. I think tomorrow I'm going to go back into Corplandia, as I call it.
Yeah, Corplandia.
Yeah, where I work in the very grounded space of corporate sales. But I'm going to start my day at a coffee shop, probably at 6:30 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Do some writing, some reading, some listening to some podcasts. Probably Abraham Hicks will come into the mix there a little bit.
Yeah, Esther and Jerry.
Oh, yeah. And then, after that, I think I'm going to work on some YouTube. And I like to spend the afternoons on a lot of days pretty open.
Mm-hmm.
I like to float. So like go on walks or read, listen to cool podcasts, like that kind of stuff. Just let it kind of unravel as it will. Float.
Grounding.
Mm-hmm. Love it.
And exercise. Where do you put both those things?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I took a year off of work 4 years ago for the first time. First time in my adult life that I just was like, okay, I'm not going to work. And I spent so much time outside by accident, and it changed my life. Totally changed my life. There's an energy there that we don't understand. I interviewed this woman. You ought to interview her. She's an expert in grounding, actually. And I mean, it is powerful. It's like medicine. So I make time to ground every day. Yesterday, my friend came and found me at the park, and I was just, I had my heels on before the event that we were at, and I was just laying on the grass like a total weirdo because I was grounding. I was getting in the sun. Heels were next to me in the park, and just taking 20 minutes to do that changes everything. I think it is one of the more missing pieces of our society, actually, that if people take the time to put themselves in the sun, put their feet in the ground, take a moment, there's something that comes from that.
So we're in a podcast studio, and there's wood on the wall.
Yeah, I like it.
There's green, which appears to be plant material, but it's fake, but it still has a sense of a plant. But and the same thing with here. And so ultimately, are we meant to live in these boxes and concrete and asphalt that's taken us away from really our nature?
I don't think so. Like, I think that's part of what's gone wrong. If there's something that's gone wrong, like, this is what I'm saying is, like, it all sounds so woo-woo because honestly, a lot of the people that deliver it are kind of woo-woo and they don't really speak the same language, right? But like I'm saying, when I'm in headquarters at this company all day on Tuesday and all day on Wednesday, I feel bad. And when I'm at home and I can go outside for 20 minutes here and there on Thursday, I feel good.
Wow.
It's very stark, very clear. And like, again, I'm not making it up to sound any kind of way. Like, it's just what it feels like, right? I don't think we're supposed to live in these ways. And I think as soon as we realize that, the better. And I don't think that people are supposed to be stagnant all day either. So I work out 3 to 4 times a week. I lift heavy things. And I run trails. And it's fun. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about where people can hang out with you online.
Yeah.
And any new things coming down the pipeline?
Yeah. So my podcast is just my name, Lauren Knight Hughes, Knight with a K. It's a long name. Mom's name and dad's last name.
Love it.
It's just YouTube. So I'm predominantly there. I have an Instagram where I like to talk with people there on Instagram more so, because you can't do that as much on YouTube. So really, those are the two places that I would say search me on YouTube, Lauren Knight Hughes, and then Instagram. It's L_Knight__H. Somebody had my name first before me. Yeah, so find me there.
Any questions I didn't ask you, or any questions you want to ask me?
I don't think there's any questions that you didn't ask me. I suppose for you, as you approach your career in the next 20 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
Given what you're learning from all these experts
Mm-hmm.
and what you've learned, what you've done in the past, is there something you used to do, even with carnivore, you used to talk about, that you've changed now? You change your approach now in guiding your patients?
I think it's what I didn't talk about that I do talk about today, which is how can I help you conceive and deliver a healthy baby naturally first? Because in modern medicine, we're really learning to diagnose disease, and then we have our playbook of drugs, dissections, or other Western medicine ways of treating people.
Right.
And so prior to carnivore, I brought in a lot of Eastern medicine, meditation, prayer, acupuncture, light therapy, grounding, and things like that. And over the last 15 plus years, 20 years, I've begun to bring in the nutrition. First paleo, keto, then carnivore, and I talk a lot about that, including fasting, and I talk a lot about faith. How important is your mindset and belief in God within you, that everything is possible when you hold the belief, and the universe will conspire in your favor. And so I think that's one of the things I want to make sure everyone's gotten a chance to ask questions about it. We talk about it, because if I'm not at least presenting it as an option, then I think I've missed what's really important. Because many people don't come to fertility world because they don't want to do IUIs or IVF. And yet we don't bring to the table, what can I do naturally to help heal my polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, sperm or egg problems, and just any other type of reproductive dysfunction, which may be healed by something you have never heard of, because modern medicine doesn't talk about it.
Yeah, ever, right?
Ever.
Do you get pushback from that, from other people in your field of work?
Well, often, and think I'm a little crazy, and the
We're all a little crazy.
And even patients were like, "Well, doctor, I don't want to talk about diet. I eat a healthy diet.
Really?
Thank you very much." And I just say, well, listen, I'm just giving you knowledge that you may never heard about. Because even if you're a vegan or vegetarian, Mediterranean, you can add fat, cook the plants well, and eat less frequently, and that may help you in and of itself. So those are things I think it's important that we talk about. In modern medicine, the more we integrate these things, because each person should have the right to decide, hey, do I want to do the Western approach, the Eastern approach, or a combined approach?
Right.
And that's what I think is the most important thing.
So you like to give them kind of the menu.
It's just a menu.
A menu.
And they're in charge of their health and wellness, their life, not me.
Yeah.
I'm just a venue to share ideas.
Yeah.
And it might be, boy, you need this. Yeah. But I always say, gee, nutrition might be the reason we're all sick. And maybe changing our nutritional ideas and habits might be the thing that really changes everything. But I always say, I always talk a lot about faith in God, or the power of the mindset, and the words we think and use are critical also.
Oh, yeah. Can I ask you one more question?
Please.
Do you think diet for your patients or faith is more important?
Well, the interesting thing about faith is faith will help change your mindset and the direction that your body goes.
Yeah.
And so as the mind thinks, the body goes. And so mindset is still one of the most critical parts, because I've got to help convince you, thinking-wise, of the changes which then evolve in your habits. And so mind is always the first thing. Now, I'm going to do this dietary change, and wow, look at the changes. It improves both egg, sperm, embryos, and it reduces so many diseases that are related to reproduction. But every disease is also reduced because we do these habits. But I always say, because again, if I'm going to take a medication, I have trust in the doctor, the medication. And the more trust you have in faith, maybe something will help you on that journey.
It's like the placebo effect.
100%.
100%, right? That's what that is, essentially. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Cool.
All right.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
This
was great.